to like, share, follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We're even on TikTok and X as well as IG. I've got a very special guest with me tonight, Britt Bryce Holmes. Brittany Dinkins of B. Dinkins Investment. She is a seasoned investor, and we're going to be talking about the probate process, putting the pieces to the puzzle together. Hey, thank you for joining us. Okay, Brittany, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and give us a little bit of background about you before we get started, just because I want people to know your story as to how you have transitioned.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brittany Dinkins, and I am the CEO and owner and operator of Probate Properties. So by profession, I am a former speech language pathologist, and I spent 13 years in public education. Real estate is something that I've always had an interest in. I actually grew up with parents who had their hands in real estate, whether it was the investing side, buying, selling. But of course, like I said before, I did speech pathology for a while. So when I just reached that burnout with education and I realized that I still wanted to work with people and help them, about a year or so ago, I took a leap and I pivoted from kind of just having my hands in real estate here and there, pivoting to doing it full time. And as Erica mentioned, I am very versed on probate. I know about foreclosures, pre-foreclosures. So just a gamut of topics just related to real estate and real estate investing.
Okay, so I wanted her to tell her story because I think it's very inspiring. A lot of people, is real estate for everybody? No. Is quitting your 9 to 5 for everybody? No. But is it for some people that are not willing to take that leap of faith? Yes, it is. And so Brittany is proof of that. And Brittany has been navigating the investor water. So we wanted to talk a little bit about probate tonight. So,
oh, hey, Whitney. Hey, Candace.
I want to tell everybody just to feel free that if they have questions, I'm going to put the questions on the screen. Do not be afraid to ask any question. Any question is not a stupid question. We welcome all questions. Actually, you may be helping someone else out. A lot of people are dealing with the probate process, have dealt with the probate process, or it's inevitable that you at some point in your life will deal with the probate process. So please do put your questions up. You can DM questions, but we would prefer that you put them on the screen so that we can answer them during the live. So, Brittany, let's jump into it. What exactly is probate?
So probate is the process that you go through with assets of your loved one upon their death. And these assets aren't necessarily limited to real estate. It could be anything from land to a house, boat, stocks, bank account, you name it. And so it is the process to make sure that your creditors and your debtors are properly paid and that your assets are put into the hands of those to the heirs or who they belong to upon your death. A lot of times there may be some paperwork in place, such as a trust or estate planning documents that are indicative of who those heirs are. But if not, the court system in the state will make the appropriate appointments.
Right. So people die all the time without a will, even though people always talk about get your business in order, get your house in order. And I mean, death is something when the road calls your name that you can't avoid. And sometimes death happens through natural causes, terminal illness, or tragedy a lot of times. And people end up dealing with probate. So, like I said, at some point in your life, if you have not already dealt with probate, that is very likely that you will. Um, when does it happen with real estate? Like, tell us about the real estate part since you're an investor. Even though I know you said that it covers, personal property like cars and different things like that, but tell us about when it comes to real estate and probate.
So what happens with your real estate, if there is your real estate goes through probate, if there's no estate planning or there is no written document that clearly states where the property goes or who it is entrusted to upon your death. So then you go through probate, which is the process again, like I was saying, like once all of your creditors and your debtors are paid, then that the person is able, your successor or your heir is able to obtain your property after that probate process.
So just so that we're clear, the will does not, even because a lot of people say, well, my will, I got a will, right? But even though you have a will, you still got to address the people that you owe, which are your liabilities. So you have to still address that before the will can actually be executed as far as distribution of assets.
Correct.
Okay. And then you want to tell us who typically handles the probate property. Once the property, who opens the probate, who works alongside with that office in the county where that person resided.
So you can either work with a lawyer. Sometimes that's necessary, and that's on a case by case basis. And of course, we're not here to give legal advice, but also you can open probate on your own. And that is through the process of becoming the personal representative or the executor of the estate. And then once you receive those rights from the court, then you are able to make decisions in regards to the probate and to the estate.
So if you want to think of it as kind of like a power of attorney after death, because you're representing that person or that estate after their death. Because a lot of people get confused with, I guess let's just do a brief touch on power of attorney, because sometimes people say, well, I've got a power of attorney. And I think that's one of when we want to jump into our next thing about misconceptions.
So, what I want to say, a lot of people don't understand this, and I've actually recently dealt with this myself. The power of attorney dies with the person. The power of attorney gives you the right to speak on that person's behalf, like while they're alive. When the person dies, the power of attorney dies with the person. And so, I think that we need to understand here that yes, it's good to have a power of attorney, but then what? So that's why it's important to get that trust, to get that will, and just to fully execute the estate planning all the way from like, yes, this is what I want while I'm living, and this is what happened when I die. So I think that's a misconception, and I've just run into where a lot of people don't fully understand that the power of attorney dies when the person dies.
Right. So it's kind of like passing the baton. And
Right.
and necessarily is the person, just because you have power of attorney, does that mean that you're going to be the personal representative of the estate?
No, that's where the proper estate planning comes into play. Just because you have the power of attorney, that does not make you the personal representative, but does not automatically make you the representative of the estate.
And then also, Brittany, does that mean that you have to be an heir to the estate in order to be the personal representative?
No, you don't. And sometimes if there is no heir or they cannot find a relative, the state or the courts will just appoint someone to be the executor or the personal representative of that estate.
But with proper estate planning, how is the personal representative chosen?
It can be chosen by the individual before they die. So like that's a conversation you can have with your family members.
Okay. What makes a will an official document?
What makes a will an official document? I want to make sure I understand the question. So are you asking, does a will does a will give your heirs the rights to your property or to your assets? Is that what you're asking?
I think they're just for clarification, if I'm understanding Lucy correctly, that what you're saying is, what is a will? What does a will need to have? Can it just be a piece of paper that somebody just hand wrote out and signed and saying, I want to give this to this person? Or does it have to be a document drafted by an attorney? But I think that gets into what state you're in
Correct.
as to what they deem as. But some, if y'all remember Aretha Franklin, they found that will, just a handwritten note in between her sofa, that was what they used for her. Oh yeah, thank you, Lucy. That's what she said. Appreciate the clarification. So if you remember that Aretha Franklin, she just had a scribbled piece of paper that they found in between the couch, and it became a legal document, and it was classified as her will. So it does not have to be a document a lot of times drawn up by an attorney, because some people get that confused too.
Correct. It doesn't.
The next question is, does the deceased person have to assign the personal representative, or can a family member go to probate?
Well, again, if you do proper estate planning, the family member can decide who they want to be the administrator or the executor of the estate. But if it
The
goes to
deceased person, let's just, for clarification, the deceased person will do that, be in charge of that prior to their death, right?
correct, mm-hmm.
And
And then
then it says that the deceased person would have to do that prior to their death, because of course if they're dead, we know that they won't be able to make that decision, but they can assign that with proper estate planning. And it says, can any family member go to probate?
yes, any family member can apply to be a personal representative. So obviously, like I was saying, I have experience with probate. So recently I was dealing with a property where a sibling died and there were two other siblings. And so this is in the state of South Carolina. So if you look at the personal representative paperwork, the two sisters that were alive, they had to both go on the paperwork as far as the probate. But the one sister said that she didn't want to be the personal representative, so she signed her rights away, and she understood that the one sister was going to be the personal representative and handle all the affairs with the estate. So, in that case, they were agreeable. So, yes, that can happen.
Well, let's make sure that we're clear on that. When she signed off waiving her right, but that does not mean that did she waive her right to the assets that were in the estate, or did she only waive her right to be the administrator or a co-administrator or co-personal representative of the estate?
She just waived her rights to be to be the personal representative or the co-personal representative, but she was still entitled to whatever. Once the probate is completed, she would still be entitled to her fair share after the probate process.
Because I think that that's a big misconception too, because then well, if I let you be in charge, then you're going to be able to spend the money and you're going to be able to do this and do that, when that is not the duty of the personal representative. Because like you said, sometimes the personal representative doesn't have a dog in that fight, and they don't have they're not an heir to the estate, they're not a beneficiary to that estate. So it does not mean because you allow somebody to execute that they can just wipe you out and you don't know it.
Correct.
So I think that that's another misconception people have, and they want to, I don't want her to have more power than me, and she go spend the money or whatever. They're going to be held accountable for what it is in that estate, so that the assets can be properly distributed. Let's go into I think we got some more questions. Oh, yes, we do. So when it's a will, why is is probate still years later and nothing has been settled?
That just depends on like the size of the estate as far as like what assets are in the estate. I think that could be loaded. I think that's case by case. Would you agree? Like it just depends on
Right.
that.
So some estates, I mean, if there's a conflict, there may be pending lawsuits that may be going on that the deceased person was involved in, that may take up funds from the estate if you're not able to win that lawsuit, or there could be personally being sued, or sometimes people are grieving, and depending on who that personal representative is, they may not take all the action, all the steps that they need to actually close out the estates. But a lot of times when there are disputes, we see a lot of estates being drug out for long periods of time. Also, I don't know if you tell them a bit. Have you seen the TikToks that's going around about South Carolina estates?
Yeah, and like the courts are taking advantage of people and things like that. I've seen those.
Yeah. So, a lot of the people are leaving them open because they got debts that they got to settle. So it's just the various reasons why an estate is not settled. But most of it is public information. You can go to, do you have the website, Brittany, or do you want me to get it?
Well, you get the website, but yeah, you can go online. I actually do not have
South Carolina Probate.net. You can go on there. Every county is not online, but you can select the county and you can actually follow that probate process, because probate is a public our public documents. So a lot of people choose other estate ways to handle their estate because they don't want it as public information. If you go through probate, whatever is filed in probate, it is clocked in and it's of public record and it's online.
Correct. Or you can go to the probate.
Your assets, your house, your car, your bank accounts. What if you don't want that to happen? If you don't want people to be able to log on to the World Wide Web and see every dollar that was in your bank account or every property that you own, whatever stock you own, what can you do to avoid that?
Proper estate planning.
And some things that you may want to ask an attorney about.
Correct.
Tell us some of those things that you may want to ask an attorney about.
Well, some of the things you may want to talk to an attorney about a trust. You may want to talk to an attorney about your options. And also it just depends. You really have to know your family members. Like if we're talking real estate here, or cars, or even assets, like some people choose to give ownership, to their house, to their children or whomever prior to their death. Or you can use something like a life estate. On your vehicles, you can add people. You can say it's owned by John and Sally Doe. You can add people, so then that way, upon your death, then they automatically receive that asset. Or you add the person to your bank account and you say Joe and Sally Smith. But again, you have to know your family members, and I also just highly recommend that you seek legal advice when it comes to these
Now,
things.
I will say with car titles and mobile home titles, which we have a lot of mobile homes in South Carolina, on the probate, if you do because if you do and on a title, then it makes that person have 50-50 ownership. And then you have to probate the 50%. But if you do or on the title, if I said Erica or Brittany, that means Erica or Brittany can sign that title, sell that car, do whatever needs to be done so that you don't actually have to go through probate if it's a car title. Now, if you're added to the bank account, Of course, people go in and wipe out bank accounts because they have the authority to use the account. Then you have where you have investments accounts and different things like that that you can put into the name of a trust, and that will help you avoid probate. But what if you don't have a lot of, we're not giving legal advice here. We're just telling you some options. I do want to be clear about that we're just giving you some options. But say I only own one house. I don't want to spend $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 going to get a trust. If I only own one house, what's another way that I could avoid probate?
I would recommend well, again, this is not legal advice. One thing you can do a life estate. So you could go ahead and like pick your heir, and then the heir can give you a life estate, giving you rights to the property, and then the deed via affidavit transfers to that heir upon your death.
Okay, and then another one would be a deed with rights of survivorship.
Correct.
And so rights of survivorship, just giving you an example, say Brittany and I are married, and Brittany, one of us, whoever passes first, the deed automatically goes to the other person if it's with rights of survivorship. Now, say I'm just, even though we're not getting into same-sex marriage or anything like that, I'm just using Brittany's because we're both sitting here on the screen. That if we were, say, married, but I had kids from a previous marriage, but I want my kids to have my portion of the house, then if I were to pass away, then we would do tenants in common. So that's why we say that you need to get with a estate planner to decide how do you want those assets. Do you want, in the event of your death, that your spouse or your mate gets the entire asset, or do you want your mate to own those assets, possibly with your children? So there are many ways to actually avoid the probate process. Now, what some people do is do a pour over will. So that means that anything that was missed by the trust, then it would designate to the trust.
Right.
So, and then I just like, I'll give an example with Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston. People are saying, oh goodness, when Bobby Christina died, would now all of Whitney Houston's assets go to Bobby Brown? No, because it was in a trust. So she didn't have full access to all her mother's assets. But if there was no will, or there was and she just died without a will, then the assets could have been up for grabs and he could have had a portion. But she did have proper estate planning, where she even only allowed her daughter to have access to different amounts of money at different stages of her life. Like, I want to say, I can't remember the exact dollar figure, but it was like 2 or 3 million at the age of 21. Then she would get another windfall of money at 25, and then as she progressed through life. So then that also allows people not to just spend up all of the money at one time. Let's go back to questions. When it's signed in front of two witnesses, that's what we have Danita Capital Solutions. So like I said, and they are, and then he has, Danita is saying, and they're sorry, it's messing up. And they're disinterested parties. That means they don't have an interest in it. But like I said, it goes back to the state in which the will is originated to say whether or not it's valid. So all states don't require two witnesses. Okay. We've got a lot of activity here, and I'm trying to get through all the questions and comments. And Sunny Baker, she said, get a trust.
I agree. Yes, I agree. Especially if you have a sizable portfolio in terms of like stocks, real estate. If you Yeah, you have quite a few assets.
But you have to figure out what you want to spend your money on, what's the most cost effective, because I have seen where the rights of survivorship, the or on the title, the bank account with the added name can have the same effect as, say, a trust, but a trust will keep everything what? Private.
Yes.
Okay. Erica said, thank you. Thank you, Erica, for tuning in. Okay. Do you know the price range for property estate planning? That's what I was saying. It depends. Go ahead, Brittany. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. It really does. It depends. Like it depends. And don't quote me, but I had someone recently tell me that sometimes there are like programs out there where you can get supplements to, you have to Google it. I don't know off the top of my head, but I did recently have somebody tell me that sometimes there are like agencies and supplements that you can get to help you with your estate planning. But again, like I would Google that and research that, depending on what state you need your estate planning in. But yeah, it can be costly, like thousands of dollars.
Yeah, but it could also a deed with rights of survivorship could cost you as little as $75. So, like I said, it depends on the estate, the contents of your estate, and how complex your portfolio is, and what you plan to do. So, it could be as little as $75 all the way up to thousands of dollars for a trust.
But it doesn't hurt to even just meet with a lawyer and kind of talk through your assets. And, it just, again, it depends on the number of assets you have. Do you have a spouse? Do you have children? Do you have stepchildren? What kind of relationships you have with people? So it's not really a one size fits all. And a lot of times lawyers will do free to low cost consultations just to talk to them and just kind of have an idea of where you need to go as far as what direction you need to go in as far as your estate planning.
Okay. And then setting up a trust is the best case, and POD on bank accounts too. So that's something that you may want to talk to. And it's a good thing that we're having this discussion so you can go back and check over your stuff and make sure that it's the way you want it. Okay, can probate records be sealed to avoid public view? Generally, you would need to talk with a lawyer to help you with seeing that, and then it would, a lot of times it's up to the court system as to how it be handled. But a lot of times, as soon as you open that probate, it's going straight to public record, just because it allows your creditors to see what they may have claims to. And I was going to say now, because people are even getting their eviction records sealed now. So, I mean, things are really, really changing. Do we need an attorney for a trust? Can we draft on our own and get it notarized? Does it have to be filed? On that, I mean, there are places like LegalZoom and different things like that that will allow you to draft one. Yes, they generally have to be notarized, and usually because the actual contents of the trust aren't on public record, but generally you'll see where there's what they call a certificate of trust that is filed on record to let you know that there is a trust and it's just not a general will. And that's the part of a trust that they keep the contents private. Mm-hmm. Did you want to add anything to that, Brittany?
No, I was just going to say the privacy is one of the benefits of a trust.
Okay. And then I'll never add anyone to my bank account, but I'll place a POD as a safety net. So it comes back to if your level of trust with people. And sometimes you don't know a person until money is involved.
Yeah, again, I think I was saying that earlier. Like, it's not a one size fits all on how you plan or what you do. It just depends on your your relationship with your loved ones and with your family members.
And it doesn't necessarily even have to be your loved ones or your family members. It could just be a close companion or even dealing with business partners.
Or a friend, whomever.
Right. Great information. Thank you. Thank you, Sade, for chiming in. What if there is no will?
Probate.
And probate, and depends on the state that you're in as to how the heirs are how the property is divided amongst heirs. And then Danita Capel has proper titling, the spendthrift clause. Oh, and I think that she's just tagging somebody. Oh, good afternoon, Eureka.
Hi.
So I think we are kind of caught up on the comments now, but feel free to give us and share some more. And I like the engagement that everybody's giving so that we can kind of move the conversation forward.
Yeah, we want to just make sure that we're answering like any general questions that you guys have in relationship to probate. I know that we don't like to think about death. We don't like to think about estate planning, but again, death is inevitable. You keep living, that you and or your loved ones will be faced with probate or the repercussions of not planning or planning. So, chime in, ask us questions, and we're happy to answer any questions or just dive into probate and just make sure that we're having a conversation and that this is informative.
So OJ's got off subject a little, but make sure you check them beneficiaries.
You mean in terms of insurance policies?
Insurance policy, your life insurance policies, also your investment accounts can have beneficiaries to them as well. And depending on the state, sometimes they make you put that information out there once you're going through the probate process as well. So so some people have been divorced from people, but they've been at their job for 30 years and they still have their ex-husband or ex-wife on their 401k or their life insurance policies that are with their job, or just life insurance policies that they have in general. So yes, I don't think that's off topic because we're talking about deceased people, and you can't talk about deceased people without talking about beneficiaries.
Correct.
So I think that is a great point. Can you tell us which states requires your will to be notarized and filled with your state? We can't go through all 50 states here, but I would just check with whatever state that you're in. And like I said, check with the estate planner.
Yes,
we're not giving legal advice.
And also, when you're picking an attorney, also it's best if you pick an attorney that specializes in estate planning. So I've dealt with attorneys. I've dealt with a particular attorney, like that's all that she does. Like that's her niche. Like at this juncture in her career, like all she does is estate planning. So just make sure that that's something that the attorney that you choose deals with.
Okay, so you do want somebody that's an expert or has a strong knowledge base. Hey, Shawana.
Hey, Shawana. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. So, let's go over some more misconceptions that people have about probate.
So, some of the misconceptions about probate. So when we're talking real estate, a lot of people have the misconception that there are properties that people don't want. That's not necessarily true. Like they're often really nice properties that people do want. Another misconception people may have is that a property is not able to be sold during probate, which that's not necessarily true either.
So if you have a property that you're trying to sell during the probate process, what do you need to do? Oftentimes.
Well, oftentimes, the courts would have to approve the sale of the property, and it's not even necessarily that the family like wants to sell the property. It may be like a need to settle debts or to settle with creditors. That's another reason that the property might need to be sold. Um, and then another misconception that I feel like people often have about probate is that just because you're living in the property, that you're automatically the heir. And that's not necessarily true either. It goes back to some of the processes that we talked about earlier. Like you have to go through the process, and then the people who are entitled to it, they are the heirs. Um, One other thing, when your property is in probate, this is a misconception as well. If the property has a mortgage and obviously there's insurance and taxes, a house can go be foreclosed on while it is in probate. So whomever is living in the property or the family, however, you want to make sure that you're continuing to pay on these things while the property is going through that probate process.
Because we see a lot of probate and foreclosure can kind of go hand in hand.
Correct.
And this is kind of because you brought up the foreclosure process with reverse mortgages. Some people are getting reverse mortgages on their properties. So a lot of people think, okay, because it's a reverse mortgage, my mom's been getting paid every month, it automatically reverts back to the mortgage company. No, if your parents, if they still have equity in that property, then you can pay off what is owed. You can refinance it. You can sell the property, pay them the difference. So it does not always have to go back to the reverse mortgage company. So that's another misconception. People think that once the person dies, they had a reverse mortgage, the mortgage company automatically gets it. And a lot of times you leaving a lot of equity
And money on the
table when you do that. So as long as you are able to pay them off by refinance and selling the property or whatever, you still can benefit from the property even after the death of your loved one. Okay, let's see. We got some more information. Thanks for speaking on the topic and bringing it to the forefront for all us to make sure our estate planning is properly established. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
And she was going to ask one of the questions we actually answered.
Oh, you skip one. Do we
Do
have
you have
recommendations?
any recommendations for an estate planning attorney?
Yes, Whitney, I actually do have an estate planning attorney. I'm assuming that you're asking for South Carolina, and I am happy to share her information with you.
Yeah. So I would say I would say to interview 3 estate attorneys, so that way you can it's like kind of like a job interview, so that way you can find which one best suits your needs. It's because, like you said, Brittany, it's not a one size fit all. So I would safe to say to interview 3 estate planners, which one would be the better fit for you, because sometimes it could be even a personality conflict. And if you can't work with that person over a series of, depending on how large your portfolio is, a series of months or something like that, or you don't feel as though their knowledge base is as deep as you need it to be, then you can make a decision from there.
Oh, you actually brought up a really good point. So when you said that over a series of time, so when you're estate planning, even if your estate is not that sizable, you typically will, in my experience, that you will meet with the attorney over several. There's it's a process, so it's not like you just meet with the attorney one time or you sit down with them one time. There's going to be a series of documents and things and conversations that you'll need to have, and that'll usually, in my experience, has happened over several different sessions.
Right. And so, and some of them give you extensive questionnaires even
Yes.
before they start on your estate planning so that they have a better picture of what all do you have going on. Brittany Love is a good one. That's from Candace. Awesome. Thanks for sharing your knowledge, Brittany. Danita Capital Solutions. And she was saying estate attorney Brittany Love.
Yes,
I don't know, Candace, you can tell us where she is located. That's good. Joanna's Meyer and Sawyer, pretty good. So we got pretty good recommendations on here.
And I would also say the one I was going to recommend is Leslie Young. So I'm happy to share her information as well.
Okay. Any other misconceptions about probate? Did you can think of? Wait a second, we got a question. Do you select your trust according to the size of your estate, or does it depend on if your heirs are set in stone?
I'm not sure. Do you select the trust? That is something that I probably would speak to an attorney about.
Okay, so that would be your I'm hoping, and Renita, let me know if I'm not answering this question correct. It was like if you have a trust and you don't know who you want to get your stuff, so you don't know who will inherit your property, then that might be something that you want to do at a later time, or talk to an attorney about having a different way to assign things. And sometimes when people don't have an heir or they don't know who they want to, sometimes they donate things to charity.
Oh, yeah.
Or organizations that they love or they're passionate about. So an heir does not necessarily have to be, quote unquote, a family member or a friend. It can be an organization that is your heir, your beneficiary to your estate. And so okay, we got a question here. So if a family home goes into foreclosure during probate, how do they get it back?
But once it's foreclosed, it's done.
Go ahead.
I was about to say, unless you talk to whoever buys it, you buy it back from them. But like once someone else buys it at a foreclosure, then they own it.
Well, I think she said if it goes into foreclosure, they haven't actually foreclosed. And I think that's another misconception about foreclosure that people have, but you can't talk about probate without talking about foreclosure a lot of times. So until that property is auctioned off at the courthouse steps, and when I say courthouse steps, that doesn't mean in literal sense, but it's gone through the final judicial process, then that's when it's going to be sold to either a third party or back to the bank and come back on the market as a foreclosure. But as long as it's in, quote unquote, the foreclosure process, you still have a chance because it is legally belongs to the estate until it goes through that final judicial process. So just because you've been served with paperwork, you may want to call the mortgage company and ask them, does the property have a sale date? Once it has a sale date, you can postpone the sale. You can the sale may be far off from that time where you can still save the property and do some foreclosure alternatives, but like reinstate the mortgage, sell the property if you get permission from the courts, or if you're at your time is allowing you to go ahead and finish up the estate so that you can do what you need to do as an heir to the property. But that's the misconception. People think that once they get served with foreclosure, the fat lady has not sung until that sale date.
But I was also going to say that that's why it's like important to have your paperwork straight too, because I've seen people lose their houses while they were in probate because they just weren't able to get the executor and the personal representative paperwork straight in time enough. So when that paperwork is not properly in place, a lot of times you are not able to talk to the lender or the mortgage company. And sometimes when you're not able to talk to them, you're not privy to the information as far as like when the sales date is, what the reinstatement fee is, what the payments are. Like you don't have access to that information. So sometimes the lack of access, it's a snowball effect. It leads to the foreclosure because the heirs or the family members just they're not privy to the information.
Right. And so you gotta know that whoever you are leaving in charge, that they can handle business or know how to handle business. And sometimes a lot of people leave people that they feel are more responsible than say the heirs would be. So sometimes you do see where there are people that don't have any interest in the property or in the estate, and they're the ones that's the personal representative because that person felt like they were the more responsible party. And then Candace gave us some more information on Brittany Love, that she served Charlotte in the Rock Hill area. And then I think we kind of answered this question, Whitney. Let us know if we didn't. It says, like, is it possible? And then, or that's when investors come in. She's doing the foreclosure process.
I mean, it could, or like we said, that you could, once you get the information, you could reinstate the loan. I mean, there's options for the family members as like the heirs of the property. I mean, yes, it just depends. Like maybe an investor comes into place. It's a deal for them in terms of like the family doesn't want the property and they want to sell it, but it's just a case by case basis.
And you're going to see there's investors out here that some investors specialize in probate. That's all that they target is probate, and finding people a solution, rent back options, buyback options. There's a lot of things that some investors do. I know that there's a man, he's about 80 something years old. I can't remember his name right now, but that's all he does is go around the country hosting seminars, and he focuses on only probate properties. So there are investors that specialize in foreclosure, and sometimes foreclosure leads them over to probate, but there are investors that only target probate properties. She said, thanks, we answered that. Oh, she said, please consider donating to Habitat for Humanity in York County. So if you don't have any heirs or you want to leave a portion of your estate to a great organization, Candace highly recommends the Habitat for Humanity. Okay, foreclosure status, you still have a chance. This is good stuff. Thank you, Portia, for doing that. And then we have another recommendation. Thank you, Janice Davies in Ballantyne. She's a estate planning attorney. And I want to say I do know who that is, and I believe she does South Carolina and North Carolina. So even though she's in Ballantyne, she does both states. And then Eureka said facts. And she says, yes, you've answered my questions. And then I've got Portia. For the love of God, don't leave multiple people on one home. Please keep up with information. So if one of the parties pass away and they have kids, now you have a whole line of folks who need to work together and less likely to salvage.
Yeah, it does get, the more people involved, the more complicated it is, for sure, or it can be.
And actually, in the lower part of the state, like down in the Charleston area, there is a nonprofit that deals with heir property, because that area down there is a lot of heir property. Does that mean people misuse that term too, heir property? And I've seen where people say, well, that's heir property, you can't sell it. Well, what is heir property? It just means that there are multiple owners that are entitled to the property. That nonprofit down there in the Charleston area, they work through these issues where I went to a seminar. The lady said there was 99 heirs on one property. So, Portia, you are right that when there are multiple people on one property and then somebody dies, and it's so important that people don't put their head under the covers when it comes to probate, that you deal with it. People want to put their head under the covers, and then you look up and you still living in grandma's house, and all you want to do is pay the taxes because the house is paid for, might pay the insurance every now and again. And now you got 20 people that own this one property, and it's a big mess if anybody ever tries to get it worked out or settled. So yes, Portia, I'm glad you brought that up. But if you do have heir property that has multiple owners and you're trying to dig through it, there is a nonprofit in South Carolina that specializes in helping people with that. And then we got Miss Bradfield that says that this is great information.
Hey, that's my bestie. Hey, Audra.
So, we're gonna wrap this up, but I think we just I think we pretty much answered everything except for how long does the probate process take?
How long does it take? It could take a few months to years. Again, it goes back to how much the estate is worth and how many people are involved and how cooperative the people that are involved are. So that's one of those things. It's not a one size fits all either.
Okay, cool. Any more questions before we sign off? We'll give you an opportunity. And thank you, Lamont, for chiming in. Like I said, enjoy watching Boss Up. Thank you, Alan, and thank you for all your input and engagement tonight, because it's really helped us move this conversation. And then it says, you guys did amazing, absolutely helpful and useful information. Thank you, Portia.
Thank you.
6 months or more. Shamisha chimed in. So yeah, so we hope that we brought enough awareness tonight that you're no longer afraid of this process or seeing that you need to get it done, or that either you got to get the probate process done or you need to handle your business prior to your departure from this here earth. Yes. Thanks, ladies. Y'all did great. Thank you, Crystal, and thank you for all your comments tonight and engaging with us. It really did mean a lot, because actually we've been on here for like 53 minutes.
Yeah, that's really good. Oh, also, follow me on Instagram and on TikTok I'm at Brit Buys Properties. So just follow me, and you can follow my journey for all things real estate investing, like probate. You can see some of my rentals I have coming available. You can see some of my rehab projects, and you can just follow me on my journey of real estate investing.
Thank you, William, for tuning in.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Miss Perry. We really appreciate all your input and helping move the conversation forward. But Brittany, if you'll check in a couple minutes after this live stream, we will, Brittany will have all her handles so that you can make sure that you follow her. And yes, I want y'all to see her journey. She's been doing awesome, and and I hope that her story at the beginning of this live was an inspiration to someone, and not just maybe just someone, but somebody's plural.
Yeah,
and and that Brittany is a testimony, and you can do it too.
You can do it too. Yeah, if you're interested in real estate, take that leap. Find that one investment property. You just never know.
And like we said, some investors specialize in probate, so they're not afraid of this process at all. And Brittany, you've had pretty good success with probate.
I actually have. I've dealt with probate 3 times so far.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you guys for joining. I look forward to engaging with you guys again. I should have asked before we log off, were there other topics like related to real estate or real estate investing that you guys would like for us to chat about?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, Brittany. Drop them in the comments, and we'll come back through the comments and circle back on some of these topics that you want to know about, because we don't want to just get on here and talk about things that people don't want to hear about. We want to talk about things people want to know about, and hopefully, as a part of our ministry, that we're able to supply you with the answers to some of your questions or some of the things that you're that you're curious about.
Yes.